What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Chicks and Tips for this Friday. It is just me today because the crew is over on the East Coast attempting to climb Mount Tappy. They should have had a successful summit this morning, so fingers crossed, everything's all good. Meanwhile, I'm going to be chatting to you this week about what is in my first aid kit. So a topic I'm super passionate about. I've worked in the outdoor industry for quite a few years. As a hiking guide and then as an outdoor instructor. So I've done my wilderness first aid, and then I was like, ooh, is it too late to change professions and become a paramedic? Because first aid is super interesting, particularly in the outdoors when you've got all those other factors going on. And I've seen some crazy lists of first aid kits out there. It's like you need this most like random niche thing. I'm like, no, I've carried a gigantic first aid kit for work. Never again. You've got to pare it back and only take the necessities, and in the case of like a really terrible emergency, you're going to adapt and you're going to use whatever you've got around you to help solve the situation. So from my big first aid kit, I found myself grabbing the same 5-10% of things constantly, and so those things I put in my little first aid kit. So let's take a quick look, and I can put the list of this stuff in the description of this video. All right, let's begin, shall we? Oh, no, there's still some more stuff in there. Woo! All right, here we go. Let's start with the juicy stuff. So I definitely think every first aid kit needs a gauze pad for obvious reasons, wounds, that kind of thing. Super common on trail when you're tripping and there's lots of spiky things about. So a gauze pad, and then either a crepe bandage or a gauze bandage. So something you can wrap around that gauze and keep it in place. Really important when you're gonna be moving, because then you might have to walk out and you might have to get out of wherever you are. So being able to dress some wounds and keep them nice and secure when you're moving about. A ton of Bandaids. This is probably just a ridiculous amount. I need to tone it back. But some really good quality Band-Aids, so not those like crappy ones you can get from the supermarket, but like actual first aid Band-Aids that are waterproof and are gonna stay in place. So grab yourself a few of those and chuck them in your first aid kit. Quick note about the first aid kit, make sure it is, whatever you're storing it in, is fully waterproof and watertight. I just use a little dry bag. There's like the official first aid dry bags you can get, but whatever it is, make sure it's watertight. Next up, I generally chuck a few like Wool-Aid or Compede patches in there as well for blisters. So blister care is definitely a part of your first aid kit. In terms of sterilizing wounds, there's a few things you can get. Some people like doing natural stuff like tea tree oil. Totally fine, if it works, it works. There's also like Savlon cream, but I like the old school Betadine. So you can get them in like little mini bottles, so tiny. And this is just gonna sterilize any wound. Similar line, just having a couple of alcohol wipes in there in little packets, super easy, and you can chuck them in, and that's for sterilizing wounds, cleaning them out. I keep my emergency blanket in here as well. Some people keep it in their emergency kit, which is like totally separate from this, but I like keeping it in here because this is generally on the outside of my bag, ready to reach anyway. So that stays there. Oh, necessity in New Zealand, anti-itch cream. If I get like one sandfly bite, I want to claw my skin off. So this stuff is like, holy grail. So if you're the same and bites just really do your head in, make sure you've got some of that in there. And that goes for any of this stuff. If there's anything extra you want to add, think about like what typically happens to you on trips. Are you a tripping hazard? Are you a clumsy gal or guy? Do you just like fall everywhere and get all these cuts and abrasions? Maybe you want to chuck in like some wound cream that like speeds up your healing. Whatever it is, just, you know, mix and match your first aid kit, put in the stuff that is like particular to you. And you might have to find out what that is the hard way, you never know. Just chuck in some strapping tape. So this is really handy for, again, keeping your wound coverings in place, and also just for taping up maybe like ankles, toes, that kind of thing. Always handy. I have no idea where I got this little one from, but it's super handy because it's so tiny, teeny tiny. All right, medication is sometimes a sticky one, but there's a few things that I carry all the time. Oh, I have two of these in here. So the first is paracetamol. The other pain relief you might like is ibuprofen, because it's also an inflammatory. So really popular with hikers, particularly through hikers, because if you're achy and feeling awful, you can take some ibuprofen, but it is kind of tough on the tummy. I'm allergic to it, so I don't carry it. So Panadol it is. I also take some antihistamines, just a couple, and that's if you get like a really bad bite or sting or an allergic reaction, or just you don't know what's happening, you're swelling up and you're all gross and congested, you can take a couple of antihistamines. I usually have it in here, but I don't at the moment. I think for when I moved to New Zealand, but I just chuck in a couple of Gastrostop, which sounds excessive, but if you are just out in the bush and you're not having a good time with your tummy and you need to get out, having a couple of Gastrostop will save your skin, trust me. Just chuck a couple in there, you never know if you might need them. And with your first aid kit, it's not just for you. Like if you come across someone in trouble, you will feel so much better knowing you have the tools to help them. So yeah, just keep your first aid kit fully stocked. The last thing I keep in there medication-wise are some charcoal tablets. So these are really good if you've got something going on with your tummy. It's really sore, you can't even move. These are amazing. You just take a few, and likewise with the Gastrostop, if you need to get yourself out of a situation, these will help clear up whatever's going on so you can actually get up and move. Nice. And then some tools. I always take little nail clippers. These aren't just handy for cutting your fingernails and toenails. They're really good for digging out splinters. So some people use like tweezers or safety pins or whatever. I find it really handy to just cut the skin around a splinter and get it out. And then speaking of, always take some tweezers. So handy. I can't count the number of times I've used them on trail. And then last up, just a couple of safety pins. And again, this is just for holding like wounds in place or whatever you need to do. What else? Ooh, one last thing that I haven't got in here at the moment is Superglue. So Superglue is handy in heaps of other situations for gluing shoes back together or bits of equipment. But I've seen it used a lot sealing wounds shut when you're in a pinch and you, like the dressings you have aren't quite cutting it, you can glue it shut. Obviously not ideal, but when you're in the outdoors and you just need to get something done, you've just got to make the best use of what you've got around you. There was an instructor I used to work with who was ex-army, and a kid split his head open on camp, and he braided this kid's hair together to seal the wound shut, and the paramedics were like, damn, that was awesome. So trust yourself in any first aid situation. Make the best of whatever tools you've got, and that goes for what's in your first aid kit and without. Like if you need to make a splint for a broken limb out of any of the equipment you have, do it. Your health and well-being is more important than your equipment, so it's all good. Anyway, that is my first aid kit in a nutshell. I think it's pretty minimalistic, and it's that way for a reason, because this is the stuff that I always gravitate towards and always need and always grab. If you've got anything extra that you always chuck in, I would love to hear it, and I'm sure everyone else will, so pop it down in the comments. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully the weather's good this weekend, so you guys get out on some trips. Otherwise, come into the store and see me, because it will just be me. I'd love some company. Otherwise, see you next week, guys. Bye!